I'm Jeff Giles.
Oh, I've been saying your name wrong. I'm sorry.
I think maybe I've been saying it wrong. I've been saying Giles. It could be Giles. No one ever corrected me.
This is special author guest Jeff Giles,
Hi.
author of The Edge of Everything, which is our Booksplosion February book of the month. Do you know about Booksplosion?
Yes, I do.
Oh, you do?
No.
Okay, good. I'll tell you. It's an online book club, and we pick a book every month, and we read it together.
I love that.
And then we do a live show discussion about it at
And
the
you
end of the
picked
month.
mine?
Yeah. Now,
Yes.
can you tell us about The Edge of Everything?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It's the first in a new fantasy series. It's set in two places. One is Montana, where I live, and the other is an underworld, a hell kind of dimension that I call the Lowlands. The book starts with a girl from Montana named Zoe who goes into a blizzard to save her little brother Jonah and their dogs. And she stumbles on a really scary thing that's happening on a frozen lake, which is this supernatural guy is trying to drown somebody else in a hole in the lake, in the hole in the ice. She decides that she doesn't know who's good and who's bad, or if they're either of them are good or bad, but she's not going to let somebody die like that, so she gets involved.
It was so nerve-wracking, that first chapter, looking for Jonah.
Yeah, and the dogs. People worry about the dogs, but I would never hurt dogs. Scary stuff happens to the dogs, but the dogs are going to be okay. I would not ask your book club to read something where dogs got hurt in any terrible way.
So how many books is this series set to be?
Well, the contract is for 2.
Okay.
I'm almost finished with the second book right now.
Nice.
And I'm really excited about how the first one came out, so it's a good time for me.
Is the second book flowing really easily?
No, thank you for asking. I'm going to start crying now.
Sorry.
It's hard. Writing a second one is hard, but it's fun.
Peter Jackson blurbed your book? Well, are you friends? What is that?
I have him right here. We're not friends. I know him a tiny bit because I used to be a journalist. I used to be a writer and an editor. The last place I worked for a long time was Entertainment Weekly magazine. So I interviewed him a ton when the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit movies were coming out. He's the only person I know that's famous at all that would talk to me. And so I emailed him and I just said, this is super embarrassing. I mean, it was like asking someone to the prom. And I almost didn't do it 100 times. But then I thought, it's just an email. He could say no. Really
but
tickled.
He said yes.
He said yes. He seemed really tickled to be asked. He had never been asked to do it before. I don't know if it'll ever work for anybody again.
But you got it.
Right. I sent it to him, but then I didn't know if he'd do it, and he did it. He's amazing. I wrote about his movies so much. I was an extra in one of them.
Which one?
I'm surprised you don't remember me, but I was in the Return of the King, the last one. I was a soldier.
Oh, cool. Wow.
You might have seen me walking behind Viggo Mortensen.
I'll have to watch it again and look for you.
Yeah, I mean, some people think it's the best thing about the trilogy. But he's a really sweet guy, and he wrote, there's only a few lines of his blurb on the back of the book, but he wrote a really long...
Did he write like an essay?
He wrote like a paragraph with...
That should just be the cover.
Yeah, with goofy jokes and stuff that I was like, we got to cut these goofy jokes, because he has a weird sense of humor. It made a lot of difference, and a lot of people noticed that, because it's unusual to get.
Yeah. When I saw it, I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, I was really happy.
You worked for Entertainment Weekly.
Yes.
What was that like, and what was like the transition for you into YA adult novels?
I always wanted to write a novel, and I just never had an idea that I liked enough. When I was at Entertainment Weekly, I was in charge of all the stuff about movies and all this stuff about books. I assigned a lot
It's the coolest section.
It is. I assigned a lot of stuff about young adult books. Some people hated us for this, but we did tons of cover stories on Twilight and Hunger Games.
I was a huge Twilight fan, so I love those.
Well, my daughter was the first one. I bought her copy for her, and she was like obsessed with it. So that was my first realization that this was an amazing audience. We were really good at figuring out which the big books were going to be, and then they became big movies. And the first time you ever saw a picture of Jennifer Lawrence as Katniss.
Yeah, it was on the cover.
That was the cover of UW, and we shot it, and I remember saying, like, why isn't there dirt on her face? And they said, because we don't know how much dirt there's going to be on her face in the movie. That's how early it was. We covered a lot of, quote, grown-up books, and the audience isn't as excited, and the books aren't as fun, and there's nothing like YA that I've seen. And then when I finally had an idea that I liked, which was this idea about the girl going into the blizzard, it just connected, and I just started writing. And the first time I've ever written a novel where I just kept going instead of, eating instead.
So your daughter, she reads books then, I'm assuming.
She's a huge reader.
Did she read your book and review it?
I don't think she reviewed it. And I didn't ask her to read it till it was done, and it was like an advanced copy.
Okay.
But she got really annoyed through the process, because I would text her and say, like, what would you say? How would you call a guy hot? And she'd go, hot? And I'd be like, well, it's got to be something, but I can't just say hot all the time,
Something more interesting.
She hated that. She didn't want to give me any slang. And some of it was awkward, But then she really liked it, which was huge, because there's nobody in the book like her, but I know she loves reading and books, and I wanted her to like it.
So the name, The Edge of Everything.
Yes.
I don't know if you realize this when you put it on the book, but like it makes it seem like it's contemporary, but then secretly it's a fantasy. Were you going for that, or did you have like alternate title names, or like?
We tried all kinds of different titles, and this title, which I liked a lot, was my editor's idea. I wouldn't have known it wasn't a fantasy title, but I guess it doesn't sound like Ember of Glass or whatever.
Ember in the Ashes.
Yeah, or something. I've seen some people say that, oh, it looks like a contemporary. However, the realistic stuff is really contemporary fiction.
Yeah,
it's just that, like, imagine if you were a teenage girl and this really bizarre supernatural stuff happened. I wanted the fantasy to be like fantasy, but I wanted the real life stuff to feel real, you know, because I love writing about families and brothers and sisters and moms and dads. And
so did you have any alternate titles?
my first title was The Catcher in the Rye, and people were like, that exists already. I fought them.
Can't take that one.
I had never heard of it. Originally, I sold it to Bloomsbury as The Mercy Rule, which is a kid's sports thing, and there's no sports in the book, thank God. But I like the idea of the Mercy Rule as like, do you know what it is? Does everyone know what it is?
I feel like I have an idea, but I don't know like the exact.
So it's like if
I'm not into sports.
Me neither. If one team is like healing the other, they have to stop batting or something.
Okay.
So it's just like enough. It's like enough already. Yeah. And I like that for human beings. Like people should only take so much punishment and then enough already. But everybody felt it sounded too much like a sports book or something weird. And then I spent a year suggesting titles that nobody liked, and Cindy suggested The Edge of Everything at the last second. The only one that I liked that I might have gone with, I liked the title Lost in It, but
Lost in It,
Lost in It, like beginning Lost in a Blizzard. She's lost in love. You don't like it either. It's fine.
It sounds like on an island when I hear it.
Yeah, I hear it because of the show Lost. She sent me 4 or 5 titles, and The Edge of Everything was by far the best. And my agent liked it immediately, and she'd hated all mine. So
I wanted to ask about this. How did you get this to happen? Did you request the pages to be written on?
I did this in pencil for every single copy, and it took me 6 months.
This is very exciting.
They always wanted to do something like this. It was Bloomsbury's idea.
You lugged out with a cool idea.
I was nervous, and I kept worrying that it would distract you as you were reading. But I showed it to some people and some young people, and they were like, that's cool. Yeah. And I said, okay, well, you know better than me. And the minute I saw it, I loved it. And it is kind of one of the first things you see. My idea was to have lowercase letters. That's my contribution. Nice. It's not a huge one, but also I wrote
but it gives it a look.
Yeah, look, it goes with that.
Do you know Hogwarts? Do you know Harry Potter? I'm assuming you are familiar with it.
Okay. Probably not as well as you, so don't throw down.
What house are you? Is what I was going to ask. What's your Hogwarts house?
You tell me yours. I don't know if I want to say.
I'm Ravenclaw.
Really?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Ravenclaw is like the weird wisdomist.
And do you say you're Ravenclaw because it came out in a quiz or because you just know it?
I thought maybe, but then I took Joe's quiz. Right. And it also put me in Ravenclaw, and then I took another quiz, also Ravenclaw.
Do you think Ravenclaw is the best one to be in?
I appreciate Ravenclaw. Every house has
people
their
are psyched
positives
to be in
and
Slytherin.
negatives. I mean, are you a Slytherin?
I'm not saying. Now I'm Ravenclaw. I'm Ravenclaw.
So you're a Slytherin.
I'm Slytherin.
Those lies.
No.
Well, a lot of people are Slytherin, especially authors. Like a lot of authors I've talked to are like, yeah, I'm Slytherin.
And they're proud of it.
Yeah, you gotta be proud.
They're like, don't mess with me.
Yeah.
Me. I remember when Harry Potter books came out, and I would be on a train, and you would walk down the train, and every other person had a book, and that never existed. Now it's a phone.
What are some of your favorite books of all time?
Well, when I was growing up, I loved fantasy. I loved the Tolkien, Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit.
Figures.
I loved Ursula Le Guin, who wrote like the Earthsea trilogy. I love YA now. I read a ton of it, especially because this is my first book, so I read a lot of first novels by friends that I've made online. I loved Girl in Pieces by Kathleen Glasgow, which was a bestseller this summer. My favorite new one is A.S. King, who's I
hear she's great.
She's fantastic. Her new book, Still Life with Tornado, is my favorite current YA book.
The last thing I was going to ask you is what your writing day is like. How does writing work for you?
When I wrote this book, I had to write it pretty quickly, the first draft.
How quickly?
I'd written about 50 or 75 pages and then sold it.
Wow.
So they said, how fast can you write it? And I think I had 6 months to finish the first draft.
It's
It's good, though. It gives you adrenaline, much like sports.
Yeah.
I just decided I would write 1,000 words a day no matter what. And that's really easy for some people. It's really hard for me, 1,000 words. Like, you can do it in 3 hours if it's going well, or it can take you 12 hours and then you fall out of the chair. But what's good about it is if you write 1,000 words a day, at the end of the month, even if you've taken some days off, you have 20 or 30,000 words. And 3 months, you have something as long as a book, even if it's not as good as a book. And then you just work on it. So that was crucial to getting this done. And I drank iced tea constantly. I ate constantly.
So you just would sit there forever if you couldn't Get out the words.
It was awful. And then once you get, you know what's funny? When you get to like 989 words, you start going the street. And by street, I mean road, but not quite an avenue, but still.
You just like stretch
Yeah, you just stretch it out.
Yeah.
And then the next morning you get there and you go, I can't believe I wrote this. I have to cut it. But any kind of schedule is really good because writing's hard.
Thank you for talking to us
thank
about
you.
your
It's
book
really fun.
today. The Edge of Everything is out. I'm Christine.
I'm Jeff.
And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.